Okay, so normally the last couple of weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, we've talked about the amendments, but I've got 2 questions for you today. I want to start off with 2 questions.
Okay.
1, do you, and I had this written down to talk about more, but I just want to hear your opinion and we'll revisit it. Oh, Jacob Powell, that's my son.
Hey, hi.
That's the hammer right there. He's a great rugby and football player. All right.
Wow, nice.
Do you support Trump sending in law enforcement officers to protect the federal properties?
Is that what he's doing?
I'm asking the question. You just answer it however you want to, ma'am.
Well, that would be a hypothetical. Are you saying, how do I feel about Trump sending in federal troops to
protect law enforcement?
Federal
law enforcers, right?
I mean, I don't even think that's a legitimate concept. So there's only 3 federal laws: counterfeiting, piracy, and treason. I mean, legitimate federal laws. If you want to talk about the possibility that he's in there protecting federal property, that would be a very narrow discussion. But what he's saying he's doing is in there fighting crime, particularly gun crime, and confiscating illegal guns, which is another illegitimate concept. All of that is unconstitutional, and I don't object to it solely because it's unconstitutional, but it's unconstitutional for the same reasons I object to it.
All right. See, I'm letting you go on that. We'll revisit that later in the podcast.
Well, I just gave you an hour's worth of conversation right there. If you want to tease it out,
we don't have an hour. Okay, so here's my thing. We are stuck in this crazy world that we've created because the mayors and the governors of those cities, those areas, they've not done what they're supposed to do. Stop the rioting. There's people that have businesses and property. There's cars that are being pulled over. People are being assaulted.
Who is authorized to protect your property?
Well, I would assume, since we're paying taxes, it would be the police in those areas. That's what we have come to live with. And I know this, if I have a business in the commercial district and I'm paying taxes and everything's going down there, if you want business owners to go down there with guns, that's fine. But then that's going to be,
I do.
I get it. I'm just saying, as soon as that happens, we've not seen chaos.
Look,
when there's a group of people we pay taxes, you can go down there and stop them too then.
Yeah. According to the Constitution, how you protect your property, if it's you're allowed to protect it yourself through the Second Amendment, but your relationship with your local, state, whatever government is what governs the police powers. It's crystal clear in Supreme Court rulings that the 10th Amendment governs police powers. It has no place for the federal government at all. They have no authority to do that, and for good reasons.
I get that, but so my question, or I guess my comment.
No, they shouldn't do it.
Don't you agree, though, that the governor and mayor should do it then?
I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I think you should do it yourself. And I think that you actually get it done because when you get a government to do it, you're empowering them with, I will give you more power and more taxes, the more threatened I feel. So that is why the government has an inherent conflict of interest with us, because we have no accountability. They don't have to pay for the damages done like an insurance company would. So that's bad. I know you don't want to hear
you're freezing up
about
on me.
that theoretic this week.
You froze up on me. I couldn't hear that part.
Oh, because I zipped to a website. I was going to read his words, but I think I jotted them down.
Well, real quick, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Trump said, my first duty as president is to protect the American people. Do you think that's true?
Here's what I think about politicians that say stuff like that. Their first job is whatever's at hand that they think will get them the polls. I get it. I know. No, I don't think that is his first job.
May I read this to you?
I don't think that's his first job.
I would like to read this to you.
I will say this. Yes, please read it. But you juxtapose what I'm asking and what you want. And I agree with people go protect your own property with what happens in St. Louis when couples are on their own property with guns and they get they get charged.
Who are they charged by?
They were charged by I think the state DOJ, but I'm not sure. I have to look at it. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a local. I have to look that up.
Well, if it was federal, then that's
It was not federal. As a matter of
But
fact,
that's what's next, right? You let the feds take over, then there's no place in the whole country where you don't have that problem.
And I think the state DOJ is the guy that came in and said, I'm going to, or maybe a governor, I'm going to completely let them go on this. I'm not going to let that.
Okay. Well, let's just first start with what President Trump, who said his first job is to protect the American people. He said his first job is to protect the American people.
Lay it on me, Monica.
I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the people.
Nope.
The Constitution of the United States. Yeah. And by switching that to the people, he violated his oath of office, because it said there are 18 enumerated powers. Policing is not one of them. There are 3 federal crimes: counterfeiting, treason, and piracy. These are not among them. There are later laws that arguably could be considered legitimate. I don't even think there should be federal property anywhere but DC, maybe post offices, but they say that they can use this stuff to protect federal property. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about going in there to fight crimes, which violates the Posse Comitatus Act. There's only a narrow exception for this kind of thing in the Posse Comitatus Act, which is that you can't use the armed services, the Army and the Air Force, to execute laws. Now, he's got a hodgepodge of DHS, ICE, and Border Patrol, three institutions that in themselves are tasked basically with violating the Constitution, because those are the times, drugs and terror, where we don't, international drugs and terror, where we have allowed ourselves to go down the slippery slope, that those people for some reason don't have rights, because rights somehow are government given and not God given. I don't know. But the 14th Amendment, which I have issues with, I do absolutely acknowledge with how it's read, that it gives rights to everyone regardless of citizenship.
So here's my question. So I'm going to sprinkle some reality in, and then I'm going to tell you where I get scared. And real quick,
I'm talking about reality.
Hello to Jason and hello to Daryl. Well, okay, I get that, but I'm going to throw a different reality. I'm somebody under a different perspective. I've got a wife and a daughter, or a husband and a family, whatever it is. They get somehow trapped into these riots, or they have the small business. They don't have the means to protect themselves. They don't have a gun. And I get we can, and I don't mean this in a bad way.
Yeah, they don't. I don't have one either.
Well, we can do this.
Fine.
But all of a sudden, they're swept up in this. And I guess my thing is, at some point, I get what we're saying. Common sense would say the police should step in and stop things. I get it. We're handing over rights, and I don't know how to handle this based off what you're saying. If I lay down what you say lay it down next to, I see these innocent people getting beat up.
That doesn't get it right. Is it okay for the UN to come in?
I agree. I see I understand. I'm asking you, how do you handle that though?
Right. And I'm telling you, first of all, what the state and local have abdicated intentionally, in my opinion. I think that the protesters are playing right into this. They created a void as a setup, because I believe this stuff is set up on purpose. They have been wanting to federalize the police for the longest time, and Ferguson was the door that opened it. And I said, crime is too low. They will have to pull back on policing. You can go back to my shows from 2013. They will have to pull back on policing and create a crime situation if they really want to up that federal police presence. I figured it out from Obama's first speech after Ferguson. And they've been steadily heading down that road. But here's the biggest problem with the whole thing, is that when I choose to step out and get my farm, I am going to have to use local authority to enforce my property rights. So I'm going to move to a state that really has the Castle Doctrine well established, that has the strictest private property rights, that I can secure my borders, that I can collect my own rainwater. When that power is federalized, there will be no place where you are even permitted to defend yourself. So you're upsourcing your authority rather than downsourcing. The response universally should be state and local government, the legitimate police have abdicated. I want my Second Amendment rights restored without infringement. And this federal thing is doing the exact opposite. Their number one goal is to take guns away from people. Read it. That's what they're saying.
And that scares me to death, because you can take guns away from people that I think you should be taking guns away. I'm just saying, yes, take their guns.
Who would that be?
Well, I'm being sarcastic. Hold on. If I said to somebody and I went, yes, take their guns away, those are bad people. That's fine until whoever gets in charge changes their tune and looks at me and goes, oh, we want your guns too. And then I'm going to be like, no. And they're going to be like, no. If it's good for them, it's good for you.
Lindsey Graham is spearheading the red flag law stuff, which is not whoever gets in office. Anyone who makes an anonymous tip gets you swatted. The first guy, or an early guy, what was his name? Gary Willis, I think.
A bunch of people taking names in class is what we got.
His sister didn't like, or his sister-in-law, Anne or something, was mad at him at a family gathering, called the cops on his guns. He answered the door. He's completely respectful. The cops said, we're going to have to take your guns until we further investigate. And he said, you're not taking my guns. And they killed him because he drew the line. He said, you're not taking my guns. I didn't do anything wrong. In order to lose your liberty or your rights, you should have a jury trial. From mental incompetence to losing your guns, a jury trial for any. That is due process of the law for withdrawing your rights. And these guys are using the federal. That's why I hate Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions, whose integrity I really admire. He was kind of in on federal approaches to disarming people. I did not like it.
I'll tell you, I feel bad for. I feel bad for people that see this, where I think the local and state has abdicated authority on purpose. I think they're doing it for an agenda. I feel sorry for the people stuck in the middle that look at this going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I have learned to live with these police taking care of me. And I've got tons of police. I love police. So this has nothing to do with that. I just feel bad for the people stuck in the middle, losing their freedoms in cities when they feel helpless.
Do you approve of democracy?
Well, I don't think we have a democracy. We have a republic. So
would you be a democratic republic, a republic whose
democracy is chaos?
Those people voted for their representatives, and now they're living with what those people are doing.
I still feel sorry.
So I don't believe in democracy. I don't think that however you want to call it, I don't like to argue semantics about that. When we say we have a representative government, I will quibble about semantics when it comes to the Constitution. But when it talks about we have a democracy, we don't have a democracy, we have people voting for representatives to execute laws.
Right.
Those laws are no longer, and I would say illegally, bound by the constraints of the foundational documents of this country, which limits how far the democracy can go in changing those laws. But even beyond that, these people who are being elected to execute those laws are not executing those laws. Trump is one of those people. His job is not to protect the people. His job is to protect the Constitution.
Stop going back to Trump.
Violating it.
Stop it right now.
They're all doing it, and they're in league. They are opening the door for Trump, who someday there will be another Democrat president. Might not be this year, but it might be.
Well,
and you're going to have that guy in charge of everything, all the way down to who's allowed to go onto your property. You're not going to be able to defend your own property by the end of this.
That's what I've said. And you and I do. This is a point of agreement for me and you, is you can say it's okay now because your team's in charge, air quote, in charge, until your team's not in charge, and all the groundwork that's being laid now can be turned and weaponized to you when all of a sudden somebody has a different philosophy. And I'm telling you, that's dangerous. Me and you agree with this. That's 100% dangerous.
That's why this cult of personality that surrounds Trump, that I've identified since before he was elected, is so dangerous. I mean, they took the energy that we were talking about this earlier. They took the energy that Ron Paul had generated by reading quotes from the Constitution, by telling you fundamental economics principles. They took that. This old man who tripped over his tongue half the time got college students to burn dollar bills. I mean, it was like, hadn't seen anything like that since the 60s. And that was a very dangerous movement. So they took that energy and they pumped it into Trump, and they acted like he was that rebel. And I said from the very beginning, this guy has never, ever, ever suggested that he would be loyal to the Bill of Rights. Never.
I would rather
And
you talk
he
about the
isn't.
Democrats, please. If you just
I
stop
know.
doing that,
Okay.
stop. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So the
Well,
cities, almost all cities are all the big cities are run by Democrats.
Yeah.
And so you say you feel bad for the people who are trapped in there and
I
you want
know.
Trump to save them. They don't deserve it.
I
They
feel
don't
that
deserve it. They deserve they
the
should
10-year-old deserves better. Somewhere the 10-year-old that can't do anything about it deserves better.
that
And I
10-year-old
feel like
is
it's on us.
probably spouting anti-Trump stuff right now.
So
I'm not kidding.
We got two
They
things
blame
to do.
Trump.
We got two things to do. I agree with that. We have two things to do. One, for some reason, we're getting comments, but they're not showing up. So I'm going to go
not
read.
seeing it.
I hadn't either. I'm going to go read some, but I'm going to tell you my fear. Here's my fear.
Yeah.
If you've listened to mayors and governors, they say we don't want Trump. We don't want the federal, the police or the law enforcement. I think maybe it was de Blasio who even said, I'll arrest the federal people that come in. So, but here's my thing. I fear that we are having the beginnings of a the military or the federal forces set in contrast or set against local forces, which are controlled by other people. And all of a sudden, you will have people leaving. Certain ones go like, I'm not going against the federals, and the federals like, I'm not going to go against the local police officers. But I do see down the road where, when you said you look back at Ferguson and you could see things coming, I think we're starting to see how easy it would be to draw lines between federal law enforcement and local law enforcement, and running them together.
An easy way to get guys to shoot at each other is to make it a race thing. So the big people who are into it, ICE and Border Patrol, they're used to thinking of the other as kind of non-human. They think of them as different, and then the same thing with DHS. They think of terrorists, these Middle Easterners, they've told us all along that certain people don't get rights, Gitmo and all that kind of stuff. They don't get rights. And those people are always the other. And if this is a race thing, that's why I think the Black Lives Matter thing is a great sentiment. It's an obvious truth. And everyone can say that and mean it. But that's why it's so easily either put up as or corrupted as a front to make that battle something that the police or the feds or whatever, whoever it is, will turn against citizens because they can look at you and think you're an other. You don't have to wear a uniform, but if they can identify that you're Mexican or Black or Middle Eastern, it's much easier for them to think of you as the other.
It's what they do with the brown shirts. It's what it's what happened in Germany. They started painting these pictures of they're the other people. You're the good, they're the bad.
Yeah, the
you're on
gold
different
star
teams. Yeah,
for Jews. But this is on your skin. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, and the movement,
the
movement, all Black Lives, Black Lives Matter is everybody. No one would disagree with that. They would go, no, I'm not going to disagree with that. It's the organization behind it that's basically says, hey, we're Marxists and we're here to tear down the family. We're here to tear down the.
But that's
nobody cares.
That's also a facade. You've got to pull that away again. All they're really actually accomplishing, because what are they really accomplishing as far as racial justice? They're not. All they're accomplishing is bringing the feds into the local. And I've been talking about this since throughout Obama. It was very clear what they were doing. And I tried to warn those very people in the inner city. You think it's bad now? Wait till it's a RoboCop from DC. Wait till it's a drone that's being operated by somebody in Colorado. Yeah, they don't care about you. They don't have to answer you.
So I got to read you some of these comments, and they're not popping up.
Why can't we see them? That's unusual.
But it's okay. I can do too.
Can you pop them up onto the screen for me?
No, I cannot. Not from where I'm at. I know.
How is that possible?
I don't know. It's called technology.
I don't like it.
I know. I
invited all my patrons,
but I'm reading it. I'm reading them right now. Okay. Here we go. First of all, JJ Boogie said, "Preach, sister," and that was about 10 minutes ago.
I won't stop.
No, you won't. Daryl Jackson said, "I agree with you, Monica." And JJ Boogie once again said, "I got to run. I'll catch this later." So let me read you one from Brad Chestnut. Said, "The idea that chaos would result from business owners protecting their property with guns is incorrect. I believe Look at the history of Kennesaw, Georgia, where every citizen is required to own a gun.
Yes.
When we saw the law passed in the 80s, crime plummeted. The only major shooting in Kennesaw was in the gun-free zone at FedEx. Now, I agree with that. So, hold on a second. I agree with that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, though, is right now that was not put in place with 1,000 people running through your streets, throwing stuff at people with guns and had guns of their own. That's what I'm saying.
So what though? Why does that matter? No, I mean, really, why does that matter?
I don't know.
Because some of the people who are violating your property or person might get killed. That politically wouldn't feel good.
It would be catastrophe. Yeah, I get it in the world we live in.
But it might stop quicker. And, you know, a lot of the rioters are out in the middle of the night. They don't want the real protesters to see that they're agents provocateur.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I saw a buddy of mine post, said if everything is always supposed to be peaceful protest, why does it start at night? Why can't
they should listen to episode 187 of the Propaganda Report, where Binkley plays the clips of the chick saying, don't fall for any arguments that looting and rioting is bad.
I heard
this
that
is
episode.
Just a fancy white chick telling people who are being duped by her to go out. I don't see her throwing frozen water bottles through windows.
That's a great episode, by the way.
Yes,
that's a great episode. Binkley did a fantastic job.
I did a fantastic job.
See, JJ Boogie said he'll catch it later. Franny. Franny. If you saw the face of Siobhan as he knelt on Floyd's neck, you can see how the officer did not seem to consider Floyd as an equal. AI.
It was weird. Yeah, he looked like an AI. That's true. He looked like he could be a RoboCop. Maybe Franny is onto something.
Maybe. See, but look, we're getting through this all right. I'll just keep reading them because I have no clue why they're not showing up. Okay.
So unusual.
You know what? So the first question got us 23 minutes into it. Are you ready for the second question?
Yes.
And then we'll do your Twitter account. So are you okay with oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just wondering if it was because I'm on my personal. I see that I signed in through my personal Facebook and not.
No, it's on my it's the platform. There's just I use that platform and it's done this maybe one or two other times, but it's okay. We're not going to miss anything important. Right. I promise. I'm really good at this multitasking thing.
Normally, you can't even read them. So.
Yeah, but see on my page, and when I go to this other website,
they're bigger. Okay,
they're huge. Okay. I don't need glasses or anything.
All right.
So the second question I had was, what are your predictions when the schools open back up? Because I think we've not seen chaos like we're about to see. And then I think it affects what we have coming up in November.
I think so too. Well, it certainly is being unrolled. I mean, I'm almost outrunning it to the point where it's just too obvious, but it started with Trump tweeting, the Department of Education isn't going to give you the money if you don't open the schools. So there's the feds doing exactly what they plan to do with policing, calling the shots because they control the purse strings. And then the Florida teachers saying, we don't want to go back. And the governor saying, it's not me, it's the Department of Education. Then you had the CDC guidelines, which were so draconian that no school really could open up under those circumstances, and Trump pressuring them to change them. And then this week they changed them and they told the schools to open up. So this is just very clear that they are setting it up so that Trump is sacrificing the children. Pelosi made a speech like that. And as the numbers on the
what do you mean sacrificing the children? I got to step in on that.
She said, I'm a mama cub, and if you...
But I mean, I don't think he's really sacrificing the children.
No, there's no chance, not a chance in the world. But they have been fudging these numbers from the beginning, and they're going to continue to fudge them, and they're going to continue to make it look like, and that false positive. So anybody, after I saw that study that David Crow posted on Infectious Myth, that I think it was the Netherlands or Denmark or something, had 2018 blood samples from 2018 that they preserved and tested with the PCR test that we used for the COVID, and 18% of them were positive. This was before COVID-19 existed. So you have to assume that 18% false positive is normal, and we have a below 18% positive rate pretty much across the board. So if you start testing kids who are asymptomatic. And in my mind, asymptoms means a disease, as in no symptoms, no disease. So I don't even understand how that's, people accept that. Anyway, they could test these kids and then they'll get positive tests. They're going to get positive tests. And the more that they test, the more positive. So they can fudge those numbers. And then there's one last thing, which is the White House, all of a sudden, for the first time ever, in complete defiance of anything that makes sense as far as administrative or executive bureaus, is getting, supposedly, this was reported numerous times, getting the raw data on COVID, and they are providing it to the CDC rather than the CDC providing it as the service to the US government. That's why it exists. So it does a terrible job, by the way, but that
we
is
talked
why
about
it exists.
that last week. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, the death toll has plummeted even relative to last week. So if you look at their provisional death toll, and their provisional does change over time, but not this much, it is unprecedentedly low. And I think they're going to cover that up by saying the White House is fudging the numbers to cover up the horrible things that they have been doing. And fold that in with Gates saying phase 2 is really going to get people's attention. He's also saying that we need double doses of vaccines every year for the rest of our lives.
We got that coming up in a tweet. You know what? I will say this. Every single week I talk to you, since I have met you, it's reinforced that we have let this world become so crazy as far as who we can trust, that this mistrust, this chaos in the brain, we don't know what the hell, who's saying what. I believe this headline because it's an echo chamber. All of this is so intentional, and we now are just sitting in our own stew going, who do we trust?
I just want to know who you think did it, let it go, and when. When you say us, and I agree it's us, but who and when?
I don't have a clue. I think, though, we started treating politicians with a certain reverence, which I'm not saying that people who step up and lead don't deserve respect, but it's somehow we started treating politicians as deities or somehow above us. And in reality, that's never how it was supposed to be. They were supposed to come from
this country. This was supposed to correct that.
That's right. We were supposed to come from the common people, serve a little bit of time, and go back to your farm. And we don't do that. Now you get in and you're there for 40 years and you get all the protection while you tell everybody else you can't have guns. I got 10 guys and girls around me with guns. You have to take this health care. I'll get the health care I want. We've created a class. We've done it. I don't know when it changed in our minds, but we've almost started holding the foam fingers treating them like sports. Go my team. And it's silly. Well,
that's a result of psychology, and that is what I call a two-party psyop.
Marketing.
But I'm reading a book that completely changed my way of thinking about the world and government. Not a radical departure, but a really important, interesting thing I've talked about on my show before on the Drive Time News Blast and the Propaganda Report, but I want to share it with you. It's called Against the Grain by James C. Scott. Did I tell you about this? I think I only started it since the last time I saw you. He's a Yale professor, and he was writing about recent archaeological and anthropological discoveries, that demonstrated to him, I won't get into the details, I highly recommend the book, that we were not even like our hunter and gatherer thing. We weren't even roaming around. We were so good at just helping nature produce for us, that we were sedentary hunters and gatherers, so that could sit around and fish and burn down forests so that better, healthier trees would grow up, and just sit around doing nothing for 4,000 years. Even after we knew how to farm and everything, we just didn't do it because it made no sense. And the advent of the state was 100% coincidental. It coincided completely with agrarian sedentarism, which is just totally sweat of the brow. And I always thought that was what the Garden of Eden was. And he actually makes that reference. The agricultural revolution was the Garden of Eden, when we were kicked out of the garden and had to work by the sweat of our brow. And that the bottom line was, any place they could get people to produce grains, cereal grains that could be dried and stored and confiscated, a state rose up as solely for taxation and slavery. The state was not people getting together for mutual defense like we think. The state from the very beginning was about taxation and slavery. And I've always thought about war as simply being, especially historically, simply being a struggle for the borderlands to see who was going to be able to tax those people. It was always very clear to me what a war was. Slavery, colonization, wars, all of that stuff that they are pulling down the statues for, they're telling us to not remember the slavery, not remember Christopher Columbus, not remember any of that stuff, because they have to tear it down probably all the time, every generation or so, one way or another, because since the beginning of time, the nature of state has been purely for slavery. Taxation is not just theft, it's slavery.
What's the name of the book again?
Against the Grain by James C. Scott. And once I really, really, really have some intelligent questions, I'm going to ask him humbly, I'm sure he won't even get the email, to be on my show.
Well, let's do this. We got some questions or comments. Are you okay with if I read them to you?
Absolutely.
Here we go. John Ballinger said, I think politicians voted themselves into a power that the Constitution did not expect. Greed, crime, corruption, and self-interest.
I disagree. I think the Constitution did expect it. I think the Articles of Confederation didn't, and the Constitution was there at the hands of Alexander Hamilton to make sure that it was possible to reinstate that self-serving government.
Daryl Jackson.
He was a British subject.
Daryl Jackson, and I'm just going to read them. I love the fact you're commentating. This is what we do. Daryl Jackson said, if the schools reopen in the fall, the president will get blamed if the students get the coronavirus by the media.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And I think that they're setting that up. I think it's inevitable. I can't see it going any other way.
John commented again, John Ballinger, we had a population should have some power to vote what our elected officials have a capacity to do. And I think there might be some typos in there. I can't.
Well, I think I understand what he's saying. I think and I'm certain that he agrees with what I'm about to say, but I'd like to clarify that the power of the politician must be strictly limited by our foundational law. It's extremely limited. So when they go beyond that law, which they did immediately after the Constitution was passed, but I don't think they did it before. I think they had a hard time with the Articles of Confederation. They passed a Crime Act of 1790, the same founders, just showing that they had to really negotiate hard for the Constitution. They wanted it to be a bigger government than the people wouldn't accept it. So the founders who got the Constitution to illegitimately replace the Articles of Confederation were bigger government guys. And then you can see some of the articles, the Alien and Sedition Acts, the Crime Act of 1790, that stuff was them expanding the power that the Supreme Court should be able to rule on the constitutionality of congressional law instead of states nullifying it just blows my mind. But the fact that these guys step outside the bounds of the Constitution, the foundational law, even the Law of Nations by Vattel kind of binds us. It's a foundational document by inclusion, by name. It says the Law of Nations. It doesn't say it's a book, but that's what it's referring to, if my research serves, that they have done that intentionally, unconstitutionally. All of those laws are outside of their authority, which is why I call this country a democracy. I know it's not supposed to be, but if they get enough votes, they'll make laws that are against the Constitution.
Here we go. Got one from David Guffey, a comment.
And that's why immigration is the problem, is a problem. Like, I'm a libertarian. I don't believe in borders, but if you have a democracy, they can come in and vote the way they think things should be or the way that serves them. So that open borders thing is a problem only because our legislators violate the boundaries of their power and use.
So you believe in borders or do not believe in borders?
Well, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I believe in the borders of my property and I believe in the guns, but they violate the borders of my property. The Civil Rights Act, for example, they took government segregation laws and they used it as an excuse to tell private people they couldn't segregate. Now, I wouldn't patronize a segregationist.
Right.
But once you do that to people, once you demand that they allow access on their property to anybody, and they're not allowed to control their own borders, then they feel obliged to control the national borders, the collective border. And so the border problem is a function of this bad society that has labor laws, that has the private property encroachments, and that allows a de facto democracy uses that as justification for violating fundamental laws. And what Trump said, it's his job is to protect the American people. That just feeds right into that problem. He is supposed to protect the Constitution, and he's not doing it. Nobody else is either.
Are you ready? We have another comment. Why do you giggle? This is what we do. This is what we do.
These are big ideas.
They are. I've said this 1,000 times. Every time you talk, it's a podcast. We just do a podcast about that.
All right.
But we don't have. Nobody wants to hear us talk for 9 hours.
I just feel like if you think I'm wrong, let me know.
I don't. Okay. Well, but here's and I won't say, I don't think you're wrong about a lot of what you say, but I do think, and I've said this before, and I've done a terrible job of articulating it. So it's not your fault. You're way smarter than me. It's my fault for a lack of words, and I'm not a wordsmith. But I agree with, if people listen to this go, yes to everything Monica said. The problem I have, or the challenge I have, is, okay, but how do we live in the society we have? We don't have the world we thought we were going to have, or we were set up to have. We have this world. So I have to vote and do some things. I have to get through the town when there's a riot. Yes. I have to pay my taxes. They come take me, and I got a family. So I have to find ways to navigate the world we have.
And I do have 3 things that absolutely should be the causes that we all get behind to stop this. We should restore the Second Amendment. We should restore private property rights, and we should end the drug war. Those are the 3 things that would
start a movement on that. And let's do a podcast on those 3 things.
And plea bargains, I think, are the devil.
I think they are too. All right. And I agree with that.
That's my compromise. I do think that we have to live in this society. So I do understand the border issue. And my answer is restore the adherence to the foundational law. I understand the problem of violence, but I say restore the Second Amendment, etc.
Yeah, I agree.
I always look at it this way. If you've got a problem, look at the law that caused it and get rid of that law. Don't layer another law on it that accommodates that bad law.
Yes, you and I agree. And I used this analogy on the phone the other day because I'm about to start another podcast with 2 or 3 other folks. That's going to be pretty good, a good podcast.
I'm sure it is.
Different, diverse voices coming in. But I said this the other day. A lot of times we run into, if we're in the woods, and I think we've talked about it before, you see a fence. A lot of people just cut the fence down. But there are people, and you should figure out why the fence is there. And then if it doesn't need to be there anymore, you cut that fence down. What we do, we see the fence. We don't understand it. We build another fence. We keep building fences.
Yes.
We don't even cut the fence down irregardless. We just build more fences.
Yeah, I think that is the problem. And the problem is what that does is it accommodates bad laws. It accommodates the bad laws. That's why I want a balanced budget amendment, because I want taxes to reflect the budget. Taxes would be like at 100% for everybody. And then you would immediately change the laws. That's why I don't like plea bargains. It accommodates all these bad laws that fill up the court system, fill up the prisons. If you had to give people their constitutional right to a jury trial, then you would have to get rid of those bad laws.
We got to read some comments, Monica.
Go ahead already.
Headgummit. David Guffey said, eliminate the excess reimbursements to labs for COVID testing. Pay the same as normal flu reimbursements. We would definitely see COVID positives plummet. If Medicare and Medicaid reduces excess reimbursement for COVID ICU patients, reimbursement to the same as the flu, no one will be on ventilators. Stop the excess money and COVID drifts away into the night.
Totally agree. Right on.
John Jasper said he could not listen to us for 9 hours, but 8.5 hours max.
I love John. I want John here. I want to have a cocktail with John.
Okay, Eric Buchanan.
He's in England.
Eric Buchanan stated that we do need to have Monica on our podcast because that's one of the gentlemen I'm about to start a podcast with.
I would love to, but I like to not if you're all going to gang up on me.
No, well, I've told you this. It's going to be exactly what we're doing now.
Just like
exchange ideas. Yeah. Here's why I love having this conversation with you every week. It's because if you watch social media or you watch these 3 minutes on the big news channels, everybody just vomits their talking points on each other and they yell and they get mad. Why am I right? And there's never the point where I look at you sometimes and go, I hadn't thought of it like that before. That's I don't know. Sometimes it's okay not to know. It's okay.
Yeah, well, that's the beginning of a deeper insight.
Eric Buchanan said, now we just have fields of fences.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it is. Look in the law library.
All right, last one. Right now, the last comment we see is from Eric Buchanan. Any Rand, you cannot rule 3 men, but if you have enough criminal laws, no one can comply with all. So all are criminals.
Yeah, Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
He's talking about. Yeah. Oh, yes. And that's where we are. And that's why I object so strongly to any crime that isn't a crime against persons or property having any jail or bail. I don't like one act qualifying as multiple crimes that could have consecutive sentences. I don't like federal crimes at all. All policing is supposed to be at the local level. They only created the FBI and the DOJ. Well, the DOJ first, the FBI later, but the DOJ to make sure that the southern states obeyed federal laws after the Civil War.
Okay.
It was designed to subvert states' rights.
Two comments, and then I'm on this. Well, 3. 1, next time we do this daggum conversation, I'm bringing my glasses with me. So,
I bring my glasses so you don't have to.
No, I'm bringing my glasses. I'm just going to suck it up, Buttercup. But there's 2 comments. Yes, Eric said and because it was an autocorrect. But Monica said, Eric said, Monica, we only promised to yell at Clint. So that's good. They'll only yell at me.
So we could gang up on Clint. I'll do that.
That's not hard to do. And then Franny said, discourse is a lost art. You guys are helping bring it back. Well, that's very nice. Thank you. Thank you very much, Franny.
That's nice. Franny's a teacher.
Do you want to go into your Twitter account, ma'am?
Sure.
We got a few minutes. All right. So I sent you some of these. This one was you did a day ago. And here's what we do, folks. I just read the headlines. Monica gives us the meat of why she put it out there and a little bit behind it. And then before we end, I'm going to make an announcement about hopefully a special edition with Monica. And I want to make sure Monica tells everybody where to find her and Binkley's great content and her YouTube page. All right, here we go. So the first one I sent you, here's the headline of the tweet. Rand Paul says Governor Cuomo should be impeached for botched COVID response.
Hey, can we include Binkley
next week?
Should we?
Well, now that we have asked it publicly, of course.
3-way.
What can
let me put it this way. Sorry, let me put it this way. I would love to include Binkley in something like that. Should we do that this week, or should we test it out first and invite him when we get it right?
I think we're going to get it right. I don't think we'll do anything wrong. It's so casual. I think Binkley's been on with us before.
Yeah.
And we'll tease it in a minute as far as he can make it. I think it would be, if he add another voice. Yeah, I think it would be great. I loved having him on. And to be honest with you, and I said this to you earlier, you guys should check out their podcast together, because between your knowledge and the way his knowledge, because how he digs and brings new things in, it's a great mix.
It's a great combo. Yeah, really great.
I'm just not going to pay him as much as I'm paying you.
I think I pay you more than you pay me.
Wait a minute. Here, you have given me more gifts.
I'm a patron.
You are paying. Oh, that's true. And you're paying me 5 times more.
Yeah. I'm a patron.
People don't even need to know how much we're paying each other. You're paying me 5 times more. Okay, so Rand Paul thinks Cuomo should be impeached.
Well, of course.
What do you think?
I think he is solely responsible for the COVID death numbers.
Oh, I do too. I think he's the worst. He's the worst.
Oh, and he makes me so freaking mad. Oh, I was so mad. So I flew to New York with my kids to see my mom.
I saw this one go.
On the way to going to a meetup in Georgia that like 85 people were going to go to, that I invited everybody. And because I was going to the East Coast and we missed all of our opportunities to visit grandma because of the dumb Rona, I took my kids because she's 91. Like, I can't wait this thing out. She's old as the hills. Hi, Mom. She's watching. So anyway, so I left my kids there. I was going to leave my kids there and then just go on to Atlanta. And the day after I arrived on a Monday. And on Tuesday, Cuomo said California, which is where I was coming from, and Georgia, which where I was going and coming back to get my kids and take them back to California, are quarantined. Right. So I couldn't go to Georgia and do my thing and come back and get my kids and go through their airport, rent the car, get the hotel rooms, all the things I wanted to do for my family visit. And I had to just, I made some accommodations and I basically bugged out of there, but I couldn't go to Georgia. And then he goes to Georgia goes to freaking Georgia, doesn't wear a mask, talking to Governor Kemp, who is anti-mask or is fighting for the right to not have to wear a mask, who he was wearing the mask, and then Cuomo comes back and does a freaking press conference. Now, the only pictures I saw of the press conference, he was alone, but it didn't look like it was in his house. And from what I understand, he did not quarantine himself for 14 days, even though he was standing next to a filthy Republican for an hour. You know, I'm using that.
Why'd you just have to say filthy Republican?
Because it's a joke. I'm being ironic, if that's the right word. I don't think Republicans are filthy, but that's his shtick, right?
Yeah.
That's his shtick. You filthy Republicans without your masks. And he was the maskless one.
Yeah, I saw your tweet on that. You were pretty ticked off. You were pretty. Okay. So should he? But so should the governor be impeached? Right?
He should be tarred and feathered.
Okay. All right. So here's another. Hey, real quick, I want to get your take on this. You ready for this? See if it'll pop up in stream. Can you see it? Do you see that?
Oh, that's another one. What are you trying to trigger me?
On. He didn't have his mask on.
I blame him as a but-for cause of my brother's death.
Oh my God. Well, I got to be honest with you.
Didn't see that coming.
No, that. I don't even. Hey, here's Clint with no words. What the heck am I supposed to say to that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This was a long time ago. I'll tell it. Not that these things expire, but my brother was diagnosed with AIDS, even though he had no symptoms. They gave him AZT, which was not clinically approved, or there was no clinical trials that would make you use it for anything but people who were on the verge of death, because it was a toxin. It was a class X drug, which means it was a toxin. It was supposed to be used as a cancer drug. They didn't even use it as a cancer drug because it killed everybody. By reducing your T cell count and destroying your liver, which is what they said AIDS did. That's how AIDS supposedly killed people. Anthony Fauci led the charge on giving people AZT as a matter of course. So my brother, who had no symptoms, started taking AZT, got all the symptoms of AIDS, which happened to be all the symptoms of AZT. He said, that stuff is killing me. He stopped taking it, but he died anyway because the damage was so extreme. And since they stopped using AZT, not that long after that, you never ever hear about any kind of epidemic of AIDS deaths. I've looked up people who have died of AIDS, and every single one I've ever looked up took AZT. So, and that was Anthony Fauci personally.
Did not mean to trigger you. I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, I'm good. I'm not. I mean, he was 18 years older than I, and I had drug problems. It's not like there weren't issues there, but that he died of AZT poisoning. And he wouldn't have if Anthony Fauci or someone who would take Fauci's place to ring the same bell promoted that.
Cuomo's Eric Buchanan said, Cuomo, some pigs are more equal than others. Daryl Jackson said, Cuomo makes me mad too. And I before we get to the your other tweets, because comments from people that take the time out is super important.
I totally agree.
John Ballinger said, we cannot continue to elect people with no leadership skills. When hiring executives, we ask how many direct reports are you responsible for? We should ask every person running for elected office what their leadership capacities are and how they base that capacity. Most elected officials have no temperament or ability to lead. I agree with that.
And I think that they do. The one thing they all have in common is an ability to lie, I think.
I think they're all salespeople.
Yeah, and don't they say it's acting for ugly people? Yeah, I never really understood it before, but it's acting for ugly people. So Joe Biden, in my opinion, is acting like he has Alzheimer's. And I think that he is what they, I think is called a life actor. Lifetime actor.
Eric said Fauci is one of the more equal pigs.
He is. God, that's yuck. I think he might have muffed that pitch on purpose to make himself really look like a nerd, a nerd's nerd.
Well, here's what I don't understand. And then I want to get to at least 2 or 3 more of your tweets, because you've got some really good ones. He knows there's going to be cameras on him. He knows it. He's sitting around 2 other people. And then his excuse was, well, I was dehydrated, I was drinking. At no point in time did I see in those pictures, and there's a lot more than that, there's water. He's looking towards the guy and talking. Fauci, as far as the mask off, in my brain, I'm thinking, that the world we live in, somebody's going to be training a camera on you all the time, at least just to keep appearances up. I would have stapled that to my face so I would not get made fun of. But I don't think they care. They don't care.
No, and these, I almost want, because of the really ritual nature of the mask wearing, because there is absolutely no evidence that you are less likely, or that you are more likely to catch COVID-19 without wearing a mask than you are with wearing a mask, especially a cotton mask. There's just no evidence. It's a ritual thing. It's a symbol of submission. If you're interested in what's going on, watch a Truth Stream Media video called The Characteristics of an Initiation Ritual. It involves isolation, mask wearing, stuff like that. And maybe part of the PSYOP is to show you that they don't have to do it, but you do.
Face coverings. I'm just also telling you, face coverings are going to become the norm too. Face coverings. They're going to start calling them face coverings. They're going to stop calling them masks.
It might be eyes too.
They're going to start calling them face masks. They're going to start calling face coverings.
Suggest eye protection.
Bill Gates on reopening. We didn't get away with it like we thought. What is that? Straight out of Event 201. You posted that a day ago.
Yeah. Event 201 was what we talked about last week, about Bill Gates, Johns Hopkins, and the World Economic Forum hosted it, but the World Health Organization showed up, the CDC of the US and of China. They all got together and predicted a novel coronavirus. That was in October of 2019. And they had fake news reports, which basically, and 7 calls to action, which basically mimic everything that's happening now. And what they said was that after about 6 months or so, I think it was 6 months, they said people would think that it was over. And then they would kind of get back to normal. And then there would be a horrible resurgence that like you never saw before. And the whole thing from start to finish would be a full 18 months. So there we are. We reopen around 6 months into it. If you started it in February or January, wherever you start it, it's kind of a moving start date, but it's about 6 months in. We kind of started to go back because it's not freaking flu season. And even coronavirus in general, which makes up a third of all colds, is the winter cold. It's not the summer cold. And so we are going to be blamed for the phase 2, which Bill Gates says is really going to get people's attention because of the reopening. And
then enter your vaccines. That's what's coming next.
The U.S. government is in negotiations or contracting for the first pass 100 million doses, but up to, including that 600 million doses of a vaccine that may not only require 2 doses, which is why the U.S. would want 600 million doses, because that's about double the population, which they're going to give away free. I would say mandate or make sure that you can't do anything if you don't get it.
That's it.
And Gates said it may be something you have to do every single year. And I predict then that you have a dependency that makes you unable to kind of exist in the wild, which is the last straw in that domestication of humans that I read about. In my opinion, I'm imposing that, but from against the grain, humans were domesticated. But true domestication means you're dependent on your master. And we are not physically dependent on them just yet. And
I think it'll become your artificial immune system.
Yeah. Exactly. I said that. I made the analogy of heroin. So you have the endo, what do you call that? Mm-hmm. Endomorphs or whatever. Endorphins. That keeps your body is just a big mass of nerves, and the endorphins keep those nerves from constantly firing and distracting you when they do fire. And when you do heroin, it kind of gives that a little boost, which feels great. But very quickly, the endorphins are not produced by your body. And if you go off the heroin, you feel terrible. That, I'm afraid, is what this will have a parallel impact on our immune system. I fear that. And I also think there will be fertility problems and maybe just illness. Illness may result because they need issues like race and poverty. And I think now illness will replace poverty as the need for government.
Eric Buchanan said, answer to part of the problem, younger generation has never read 1984, Animal Farm, Brave New World, Atlas Shrugged, or Fahrenheit 451. Guess, real quick, guess who got his daughter reading 1984? This guy right here. She is
That's
reading
fantastic.
1984 right now.
They call it COVID 1984. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it is funny.
Yeah, I was going to look up like who attends public schools, like by demographic, just to see, because the public schools, I have a son with Down syndrome who goes to public school for the special needs classes, but my other kids go to private school. And although every school I've ever sent my kid to promotes an agenda of one sort of or another, the public school actually doesn't really teach them anything either.
Yeah.
My son gets a good education, but he has Down syndrome. I mean, the standard's kind of low.
But now they're telling people there's certain books and things you can't read anymore. It's going to get crazier. That's another
and
long
they
podcast.
Want to erase history because 100%. The history, I think
because the history gives you warning signs not to do that again. Exactly. They need those gone.
Exactly.
They need those gone. All right. This one I thought was pretty cool. Amazon met with a bunch of startups about investing, then launched competitive products. You called it brain rape?
Yeah. So I used to watch this show, Silicon Valley, on HBO, I think it was. And they had a funny scene where they were invited to give a presentation to a big company. And they gave the presentation, never heard from the company again. And then the company launched the product. And they called it brain rape because the company would ask them questions and they told them everything. They drew diagrams. Somebody told me it wasn't exactly brain rape, but I think it's such a funny expression that I had to take that opportunity to tweet it.
No. ID 2020 isn't a tracking device, quote, you crazy conspiracy theorist. It's just a way everyone on Earth can be tracked, right?
Yes, because there was an article, I think it was CBS News or something, that said crazy conspiracy theorists on the internet are suggesting that Bill Gates wants a tracking device to determine whether people are vaccinated or not, or a tracking device on people. The headline is above that tweet if you clicked through. I don't remember what it said, but in the entire article, it does not talk about ID 2020, which is something that is a joint venture between Gavi, which is the vaccine initiative, which is already a Bill Gates project, Bill Gates Foundation, and Accenture, I think, like the old Arthur Andersen Consulting, maybe. They have an initiative called ID 2020 where they want everyone in the world to have an ID that works both in meat space and in digital space. They are especially concerned about refugee children who don't have an actual place to live, to be able to have something portable that they can use at any time, not only to prove their identity, to give them access to social services, but to prove that they got vaccines.
And I'm reading
that is it to me. That's tracking. And if it
of course he says no. Of course he says it's a. He
says no because the way they phrase it is as if it were a GPS tracker, but that's right. It's a barcode, but it's still tracking.
You also posted this one. Wow. Corbett saw this coming from miles away. It's scary, actually, in more ways than one. Fed accounts for all, with automatic and recurring payments triggered by economic crisis. Do you know what this is about, or do I need to open it up?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Okay.
No. Yeah, it was an article in Market Watch, which is a Wall Street Journal product, I think. If you scroll down and read where the author came from, it's the Open Society Foundation, which is George Soros. Open Society, long story. But that guy was recommending that we have Fed accounts so that people can get their basic income payment, which is what this is ushering in, the COVID thing and all these federal stimulus, whatever. Then because there were problems with the initial payout, which as soon as there were problems with the initial payout, I knew where they were headed, and I had my ideas why. But even before they happened, Corbett and Media Monarchy James Evan Plato said that it would happen. And the point is this: if you don't get your Fed account, your bank account with the Federal Reserve, it'll take forever for you to get your check, to cash your check, whatever. But if you open the account, they will deposit it directly. That's going to open the door to totally no cash, which this is also doing a cashless society.
We've talked about that. Yeah.
$50, so it won't be like exactly the same dollar. So if you use cash is going to have a declining exchange rate, and the DigiDollars is what you're going to have to do. It'll be total surveillance, so you can never make any black market transactions. Or pay anybody off the books or anything like that. Okay, maybe you shouldn't have to, but what if you want to rise up against a treasonous government? You're not going to be able to make any kind of transactions. Like, there will be no cash. And that will also, if you're bad, they can turn it off. That's a social credit score thing. But the one thing that the International Monetary Fund identified as a goal for DigiDollars, which I call it that, but nobody else does, is to be able to force negative interest rates on people, which means your money will decline in value if you don't spend it.
Right. Yep. And we've talked about that when it comes to cashless society, how it also will affect the social score, your social society score.
Right. I got deplatformed from WordPress. What if I get suspended from DigiDollars? How am I going to eat? I got to go to the soup kitchen. Will they even feed me? Will the doors not open for me because my Vaxtat doesn't work because I got socially booted? Well, that's what this is. The fourth industrial revolution on the World Economic Forum website gives you quite an insight into this. And then that couples with the Great Reset, also on the World Economic Forum website. And the World Economic Forum is behind all this. So that's what they're doing. You can see them plan it. You can see them execute it. You can see them.
They're pretty bold now. Like. They don't care. I want to read you a few of these and I know you've probably seen it, but it's from Dave Ramsey, who said, "What does a true cashless society? What does it actually mean?" Do you know who Dave Ramsey is?
I know who he is.
Okay. He posted this and I like it. It said, if you're struggling with your mortgage on a particular month, you won't be able to do an odd job to get through. Your child can't go and help the local farmer to earn a bit of summer cash. No more cash slipped into the hands of kids as a good luck charm from a grandparent. No more, $5 in the gift cards for birthdays. No more piggy banks. And he's got this list. No more charity donations. What a cashless society what it does guarantee. Banks will have full control over every single penny you own. Every transaction will be recorded. All your movements and actions are traceable. I encourage you to go read this thing from Dave Ramsey because it's right up your alley.
Can you send it to me?
I'll send it to you right now.
Thanks.
I can send that to you.
I noticed I got my daughter a debit card and now she can Postmate donuts and stuff. I'm like, hey. So I give her an allowance, but it's very hard to keep track of her using technology to spend more money than I think makes sense. So she used to have to ask me, I don't know. It feels less controlled. I mean,
it is. Well, it's whose control? It's not your control anymore.
Yeah, it's not my control. It's her, and she can plug directly into online services, which make no sense. Like, you just don't think about how crazy expensive Postmates is. I will not do it, but she doesn't drive, so she just does it.
I'll send you this thing from Dave Ramsey.
I cut that off
as soon as we get off.
And you know what it is? It's so easy to just zip money over to her into the debit card. I'll just transfer the money, and I used to have cash and really think about what I was doing with it. It's like Amazon. I spend it more freely because I just don't touch it.
The more we give up things, we give up right. Same thing we talked about earlier. We've talked about this every week. We give up freedoms and control based off fear, security, and what? Convenience. I'm willing to do it because it's easier.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And the more they stress us out and overwork us, the more we think convenience is what we need to get it all done. But as our capacity increases, their demands increase. That's why looking at it all as a slave state is kind of helpful. It could get you down to the path of thinking that the solution is communism, because that's the kind of rhetoric that they throw out there. It isn't.
It isn't. No, it's not.
That's just an even worse slave state. But it's good to understand that the state, the force of the state, whether it's communist or fascist or democratic republic, is there. See, one of the big things it does, it subsidizes spending money it subsidizes production and consumption over leisure. So when it builds infrastructure, it's taking the transaction costs out of you making a transaction. So it makes going to the movies way cheaper than if you had to pay $5 for the road to get from you to the movies. So instead of staying home with your family reading a book and thinking, well, I'll do that, or I'll go to the movies for $30, you're saying, I'll do that or I'll go to the movies for $25. So they subsidize those transactions with your tax money. And that changes us into more of like a slave thing where it subsidizes production and consumption rather than leisure. It gets deep.
So we got 2 more comments and then we'll let you go, Monica Perez, because we're running at an hour and 1 minute right now, hour and 2 minutes.
Okay.
Mike, and I'm going to get his last name wrong. CEZ. How would you pronounce that, Monica? CEZ. Is that Chez? Mike Chez.
I don't know. Mike says. Chez. Let's just say
Mike
that
says.
it's a.
He said, "Hi, good people."
Mike says.
He said, "Hi, good people." That's it. That's good. But Eric Buchanan said, and this we did this after, right at an hour. He sent this. So how do we fight back?
Oh, I believe that true independence is the way to fight back. If you don't do anything that will really try to avoid being dependent on the medical system, learn how to grow some food, get your guns, grow a chicken. Like I said last week,
you don't grow chickens, but go ahead.
I know. I'm just kidding. But I mean,
they grow.
I'm not doing it right now, but my vision of how, and it's because I'm plugged into a system with kids, special need kids. And I went to school till I was 30 and so did my husband. And we're just in it, too far in it. But that doesn't mean it's not a goal of mine still, even though I'm getting old. But the point would be food independent, be health independent, fight for your rights to defend your own property, water independence. And then, I mean, I don't think, I like to kick the can. I think it's worth working for, but my expectation is if I ever were to get involved in politically defending my rights, it would have to be at the very local level so I can defend the 4 corners of my property. But I do what I'm doing is try to alert people to the idea of the Bill of Rights. But look at Trump. He converted all of the people who used to agree with me about the sacrosanct nature of the Bill of Rights and telling me that I'm quibbling about semantics.
I would say that there are some people, and I agree with everything you said, but almost becoming an alienate myself, an isolationist. I don't know if that's actually Eric's job is how do we fight back? I don't know if that's fighting back. I think that's just saying it's over and I'm going to protect mine. And
not
I don't
an
think
isolationist. No.
Okay.
There are tons of people like that. That is one thing where like a vote, you don't even know where that vote went. It's like rubbing the belly of the Buddha. You don't know anything about that vote. It is in the mind. It is in the air. But a lot of people are homesteading and have that sense and any kind of just find where they're doing it. Find where they're doing it and be kind of close to them. And I know there's New Hampshire has the Free State Project, but there are also places that are suitable to that kind of independent farming. And you can stitch yourselves together into a county pretty easily. And you can still use that system. But I feel like as we fight this fight in their framework, you see how easily they can control us with their propaganda, from whether it's Trump #trust the plan, or there are trillions of invisible monsters everywhere trying to kill us all. So you'd better stay home. Well, when I wait for you to pull me up, Clint, this service that you use to broadcast this, it has a little house. And the house circles around. And when it stops circling, it says, stay home. And then it circles around again. It says, stay home. That's just mind control. And if they can control our minds to that point, this voting isn't going to be enough because they can clearly control the way people think in that realm.
Mike says I'm in New York City and it's hard to escape the system being here. So
me too. I know. I feel the same way. It's really, that's why I kind of want to do it to give my kids a foothold. I thought, as coming from parents who are not college educated, that understanding higher education was giving my kids a foothold into the system. But that my father was right all along. He said, skip that and buy a farm. And I should have listened to him. But if I'm not too old by the time I get to it, I'd like to at least give my kids a foothold.
That's what I would like to
that. And I took my son to see my green anarchist friend Bellamy up in upstate New York just to see what permaculture looks like. He's recreating the Garden of Eden.
We got to jump off here. I just want to say this.
Is that thunder?
Yeah, I got a bad storms rolling through here, like real bad.
Wow,
and we just had tornadoes run through a couple, about 3 months ago, which took out about half my backyard. So I'm going to jump off here, but I want to say this to you real quick. Look me in the eyes deep, Monica. Stay home. Stay home, Monica.
To tell you the truth, I'd love to stay home.
I bet you would. All right, do me a favor though, before we jump off, before I get swept away in whatever's rolling through my front yard right now. Tell everybody how to find you, and then next Friday at 6:30 Eastern time, me and you for sure, but maybe me, you, and Binkley are going to do a 20-minute special, and I'll be promoting it here on my page. We can ask questions going into the little.
What's the date on that? The 31st, July 31st.
I think there's only 31st. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it at 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern.
Yep.
And it's going to be just 20 minutes because we have a disappearing patron party at 8. So we've got to hop and get ready for that. So you can find our daily show, the Drive Time News Blast. It's 30 minutes of news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice every weekday on the Propaganda Report feed in your podcast. And we have great other stuff from the Propaganda Report. Episode 187 is a must listen. If you want even more content, if you want to go to the cocktail parties, if you want to shout out on my show, go to Propaganda Report at Patreon. So patreon.com/propaganda report. And how about you, Clint? And don't forget, I tweet constantly at Monica
all the time.
Show.
And you're on YouTube where you can find all these conversations.
Yes. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I believe it's just youtube.com/Monica Perez. Maybe Monica Perez. No, it's Monica Perez.
Monica Perez.
Right
during the break, podcast.com, I've put out a few new episodes. I have cool conversations with great folks from everywhere about everything. I love it. Dayfirepodcast.com, me and Dawson Wheeler, who used to own a really big outdoor gear company, merchandise company. He is now retired and he knows everybody. So we get people from around the country who do these great adventures outdoors. We talk to them. We give tips on gear. So that's dayfirepodcast.com. And then if you like business, I do a radio show every week with a buddy of mine. It's called Marketing Mix Radio. We have done that for almost 8.5 years. So with all of that, and I have a Patreon too, which I could use 10 or 15 bucks.
I'm a patron.
You are, and I'm a patron of yours. There we go.
Thank you.
Hey, so right now things are flying through my front yard, so I'm gonna get out of here.
Goodbye.
Okay.
See you soon. Stay safe.
Bye, everybody. See y'all Friday, 6:30 Eastern time, 3:30.
I'll be there.
All right. Bye.
Fantastic. Bye.
Thank y'all.